Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Hammy, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We are, of course, a Blue Wire podcast. Joining me today, we have Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good. A little tired, but looking forward to the weekend. How about you guys?
Brilliant. It's bright, sunny, 82 degrees, no rain, no dark clouds. Sean, you should be happy.
I'm in my element. We are in Nirvana right now.
That's right. We are, of course, joined by Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I am doing well. Back in SoCal, visiting some family for Father's Day, and one of my little brothers graduated from high school yesterday, and I believe that I've made everybody aware that this podcast is happening, but we are subject to guest appearances. You know, it happened in the last one, and again, I think people are aware, but you know, it's a little chaotic over here.
Wait, what did I miss? Something happened in the last one? Like there was
my stepmom made a brief appearance.
We talked about this, Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, not the last one. That was second to last because I was I was present in 10. Yeah, okay, we talked about this.
No, he means the last time he was down, visiting. It got a little wild, Sean. It got a little wild.
Yeah, she thought she was sneaking out the camera, and she was not, and it made for what I thought was a hilarious video.
And all the jokes, because there's so much innuendo from that. By the way, since you're down there for a graduation, can I no children that I know of, so I preface it with that. But James, you're a father, and Brenden, you just went through graduating high school like a couple years ago. So
sure.
When you were, how many freaking graduations are there? Like it seems. I know there's high school, I know there's college, but it just seems like I have friends of mine who have younger children, and it's like, oh, my little daughter, she's going through graduation. It's like, oh, I thought she was younger. Would she graduate? Is she going to high school already? No, she's graduating 4th grade. 4th grade. Do we graduate every freaking grade? I thought, okay, I can understand, not that it happened to me, although I'm not saying I got held back. I can understand people who go graduate elementary school to maybe junior high or graduate middle school to high school, which you should only have one. Like either pick one. You're going to graduate elementary school and go to junior high, or you're going to graduate junior high and go to high school. And then you graduate high school and then you graduate college if you go on and do that. That should be it, right? Like, what are we doing?
Okay, so typically with nowadays, kids that are going from like kindergarten to 1st grade, a lot of times they do a little kindergarten graduation because it's like the first, right? After that, there shouldn't be another graduation in my book until you're going from 8th grade into your freshman year, when you're going from a junior high to a high school. And that can be someone who goes through a K through 12, a K through 8, or who has like my junior high was 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And now I think it's just 6th, 7th, 8th. But yeah, that's kind of like to have a bunch of extra graduations. I don't buy that. And then high school, and then college, and then if you get to go to grad school, all of those things.
So Sean, you won't be at my 4th grade graduation next week, I take it.
Damn it!
Did you just graduate 4th grade?
Did he get you? Did you send him an invite? Come on.
I did. I think this was him formally rejecting that, but.
Yeah. This is, I think the first year.
There's a little too many sometimes.
Hey, I'm all for giving kids credit and celebrating. I'm here for a party. I'm just saying, like, good God, man, how many the invites? Like, oh, you got to come to the graduation. It's 4th grade, and I don't even know your child. Like, what the hell are we talking about?
Oh no, they don't want you to come to graduation. They want you to send like a.
They want me to buy shit for them.
Yeah, with like $25 in it or $50 in it. Yeah. This is that season where we get a lot of cards like, hey, so-and-so is graduating, and we send out like, here you go, here's $50 or whatever. So
someone told me, oh, it's because we want to, pick up children and lift up their spirits. Okay, fine. I'm all for that. But I don't buy that. I think it's because of the social media era where everyone wants to, make everything about themselves. And yeah, I think that's
next time you get one of those, just send an envelope, like a card.
No.
With a participation, little blue ribbon, participation ribbon. It'll be like Sean's thing.
Yeah, the participation ribbon, or
yes.
or
you participated.
little trophy, or I should say, oh, are they starting employment yet? Because now that you've graduated, now you can start contributing to society
You can say, "Hey,
as a fourth grader.
are they an honor student? Do I at least get a
Sean's just
bumper
like sending a
sticker? I
job
know an honor
application.
student."
Yeah.
All right,
Going to
let's jump
work.
into this. Number one,
Let's
if you're
do it.
watching here on the YouTube, give us a thumbs up if you don't mind.
Yeah, why not?
Let's see if that helps.
Where's
Also,
your bubble?
where's my bubble? Let's see. Oh yeah, the bubble appears. If you are listening somewhere, whether it's Apple or it's wherever you're listening, you can get this just about everywhere. Give us a rating and review. Give us stars, all that stuff, if you don't mind. Let's see. Outside of that, we are going to try to throw together next Thursday an off the record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour. We'll do a virtual to start to get it going again, and then we'll work on something for later. And then the next week after that, I am actually going on vacation the week of the NBA draft. I'll be back in time for free agency to start, but I'm going to miss the 2-day NBA draft. But we might still be able to throw something together. I'm not going to be that far away.
Where are
I'll
you
be in
going?
Cabo. Cabo.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll be in Cabo. So a little trip with the family and some other friends, and we have to bend to the will of the people that we go with because they're like timeshare people, and it's like, okay, like I can't fight it. It worked out just fine last year when I was in Puerto Vallarta during the same time. Okay, so we're gonna try to throw together off the record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour. If you're a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat, you'll get an email about that. I'll probably send out an email on Monday, and then I will send out another email on Thursday with the link to the festivities. And then you can join us for like literally off the record. I don't even think we need a guest. It's been too long since we've had one, since we've had an off the record, and I think people. We owe the good people at least that to start, where we're just kind of catching up and talking, hanging out, having a few drinks virtually, and chilling. So watch for that. And if you want to get in on that, go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber. It's only $7 a month or $75 for the year. And if you're a premium subscriber, you get an invitation sent to you. Cool. We do have Kings news. It's kind of the fun time of the year where it's quiet, but it shouldn't be this quiet. But we're about to get into Crazyville when it comes to what's happening next. We get the NBA draft on the 26th and 27th. Free agency, the official window opens on I think 3 p.m. on the 30th, 3 p.m. Pacific time on the 30th, but then the moratorium opens, so it'll be a little like wild and crazy here over the next like 2 to 3 weeks. But Sean, we'll start with you because you were able to we talked about Sasha last week and sort of the situation, but you were able to get a little bit more clarification and put out a tweet yesterday to try to clarify what's going on with Sasha Vezenkov, whether he wants to be with the Sacramento Kings, whether he would like a trade, whether he's going back to Europe, all of that stuff. What do you got for us?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it was, I think there was a lot of confusion when those reports kind of surfaced, and there probably shouldn't have been. I think, honestly, Sasha Vezenkov was very open in his exit interview, and we talked about that quite a bit just, 2 months ago, and frustrated with the lack of playing time, frustrated with wanting to have a bigger role. He didn't express really regret for coming to the Kings or even to the NBA for that matter, but certainly wanted a different type of role than what played out in the season. And part of that too, I mean, let's be fair, like there was excitement around him. I mean, there was a buzz around Sasha. He had his own press conference. He had, people going overseas to try and pluck him over there. He was really the big offseason acquisition. And when he came in, and you could see that there was going to be like a development process. There was going to be a little bit of a learning curve here for him. And even Mike Brown was comparing him to what happened with Manu Ginobili when he was in San Antonio. and during his time on Greg Popovich's staff. So, and then of course, I mean, man, he missed like 9 weeks because of an ankle injury. So
Yeah,
I can
22
understand his
games.
Yeah, I can understand his frustrations. I can understand his, desire for more playing time and a bigger role. But when you see a report that he's going to leave the NBA or, which is separate than even just leaving Sacramento, it's startling. And I figured, reaching out to a number of people when that report came out, there was days of silence that it was a little bit jarring, because you would think that you'd want to get out in front of something like that. That's a strong message, whether it be for the confirmation or at least to get out ahead if it wasn't true. And the silence made me think that this is true. And then finally, I think when there's just a kind of a huddling of people throughout the NBA on both Sasha's side, King's side, people who are connected to both sides, it's a little bit of reading of some of the tea leaves. I think with the end of the day, he just wants to play. And when I got one source on Thursday, was it Thursday? I'm getting my days mixed up now, but yeah, on Thursday, who said that it was, off base, that the reporting was off base, and he would honor his NBA contract. That was bold enough to where I figured I'd go with the report, which was that despite his frustration of lack of playing time in his first season with Sacramento, is that he's still going to honor his NBA contract. Now, unless he goes to a buyout and works out a buyout, that's something different. But it's not like he's just going to up and leave, from what I'm told. And so, I know that there's a desire that the Kings want to keep him in Sacramento. They look at him as an asset, and there's other teams that would look at him as an asset. But do those teams, Kings included, do they look at him as an asset that can play a large rotational role with extended minutes? We don't know that yet. So just a lot of moving parts, and I think it'll kind of figure itself out. But nothing will surprise me, whether Sasha's on the Kings next year or not on the Kings next year. Neither one will surprise me. And I think it's an interesting conversation, but I do think that Sasha will be in the NBA next year, unless him and his people decide that they want to work something out with the Kings and try and go back to Europe and figure out the contract. But if it gets to a point where they have to play hardball or whatever, or they can't find a middle ground there, then he's gonna have to honor that contract.
Yeah, Brenden, what are your thoughts on this? Because like Sasha as a player, it's just tough for me. Like I've got a lot of opinions on it, but I also, the NBA is about opportunity, and I'm not sure that the opportunity is going to be here in Sacramento for one reason or another. Like, where are you at with this?
Yeah, honestly, when they were bringing Sasha over, and just to kind of echo what Sean said, like that did feel like the big offseason acquisition, felt like really what they were adding to their team, that along with Chris Duarte, but even more so Sasha. I thought TRey Lyles was a bit redundant. They almost kind of feel like they do the same thing, whether that be a stretch 4 or even playing the backup 5 a little bit. We kind of saw Sasha do that here and there throughout the course of this season. But I'm with you. I think that the opportunity may not be the simplest to figure out in Sacramento. I will say that it seems like one of the criticisms people have of Mike Brown is his rotations at times. And he said that one of the things he gets from Steve Kerr is that he's going to throw people in, keep guys engaged. And I think that I can understand where Sasha may be a little bit frustrated, but I feel like Mike did do that. I feel like he gave him okay amount of opportunity. You mentioned the games missed with those ankle injuries, 3 different ankle injuries throughout the course of the year. And it felt like, I'm forgetting which one it is here, but one of them happened right as it seemed like he was starting to roll, and they were getting him in the rotation a little bit. And that's just kind of poor timing. It does make me think of, I believe it's Micic is how you say it, the other European guy that came over to OKC earlier last season, and then eventually was included in the Gordon Hayward trade over to Charlotte. And now that he's on Charlotte, he was playing really well, getting more opportunity. And honestly, something like that could make a lot of sense for Sasha. And from a Kings perspective, his 6 point, whatever, close to $7 million deal is pretty valuable in trade conversations.
Yeah, so you're right. Like Milicic, like it was a bad situation for him where he was, and he found a better situation. Um, I, I'm going to go this way. Like, I don't think his time in Sacramento has to be done, right? Like, first of all, I don't think anything's out there that we didn't kind of feel coming out of the season, right? He was, I thought, like what Sean said, he was very frank with everybody when he was in his exit interviews. He did not feel like he had made a mistake coming to the NBA. He wanted the challenge. He still wants a challenge of the NBA, but he also would like to play more. And I remember very distinctly he said, everybody wants to play more. He's like, even the guys that are playing 35 minutes a game here, they want to play more. So that's just who we are. We're basketball players. We want to play as much as possible. And I get the frustration and everything. So for me, when it comes down to it though, like this roster wasn't built to optimize Sasha Vezenkov. And that's tough because if you're going to run it back with the same basic forwards, and that's Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray and TRey Lyles and Sasha Vezenkov, I just don't see an opportunity. I think TRey Lyles is a more seasoned NBA player and a better fit for what the Kings do. And I agree with you, Brendan. I think they are redundant to a certain degree. I don't think you can have them on the floor together a whole bunch of time. And if you did, you would have to have like such a crazy super athlete defending behind them, and you would have to have super athletes defending in front of them, because that's kind of where what we're talking about, like the lack of ability in rotations. Neither one of them are true creators for themselves. When you lose Malik Monk as your number two guy, your guy off the bench who's creating for people, the Kings had no answer for who that would be with the second unit. And the guys that really hurts is guys like Sasha and guys like TRey, who they don't naturally create shots for themselves. They're guys who are catch and shoot guys. Every once in a while, they'll take a guy off the dribble, but it's in an extreme situation where someone closes out too hard. Or they'll do like the backdoor cut thing for Sasha, or with TRey, he'll go get an offensive rebound and put a ball back in. That's kind of like who they are as players. So I think, like, look, if you're going to maximize a guy like this, you have to surround him with long, super athletic players that can defend his weaknesses, and that someone else that can create. And if you can't find those pieces, then you got to choose between, again, a guy like TRey and a guy like Sasha. And I think TRey is more valuable to the Kings because of his leadership, because he's more defined in the NBA and who he is, because he's bigger and stronger. Those are things and because I think TRey can legitimately play the 4 and the 5, where Sasha, they tried him at the 3 quite a few times. But he's more of just a stretch 4. So I think it's a weird situation, but I also think like the reporting from Europe is always a little strange. And, I'm glad we were able to clear up some of it, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like too, there's I just don't think, like, I agree with you, not much has changed, and I think Sacramento, the front office, I don't think that they are completely surprised by anything. And what I mean by that, even with the lack of playing time for Sasha in this first season, I was asked earlier today about, is there a like a contrasting style opinion when it comes to Sasha in terms of what the front office wants and what Mike Brown wants. And I think there might be a little bit in terms of what ultimately they view Sasha as and how they build this team that Mike Brown is in charge of to put together rotations and ultimately win. But I think when you have the injuries, though, you factor those in, and you also factor in the early portion of the season where it was apparent that there's going to be like a learning curve here. Like there's some things that have to get understood. And even Mike, who I thought was brilliant in the way he talked about the Manu Ginobili situation, I think everyone was kind of on the same page, realizing that, hey, it's not just a 1-year thing. You signed him for a 3-year deal. You have a team option for him on that 3rd year. So ultimately, you're not just signing him for that 1 year. You knew there was going to be some teachable moments that come along the way. And it's why, and we talked about it on this podcast, where, there was legit chatter of the possibility of sending him to Stockton. But I think what became consistent with what this front office does, especially within the first year, and I'm talking about Neemias Queta this way as well, is if you remember with Queta, he stayed around the big club in his rookie year a lot, almost to a fault, because we're just like, this guy needs to go play. But then realizing that those games, his game days become practices, and the stuff that he learns about being around the NBA culture and the day in, day out life of what's expected to be a professional basketball player in the NBA, particularly in Sacramento, and the grind that the schedule is, like, that almost becomes more valuable for him than sending him off just to get some minutes, because you already know what he can do on the basketball floor. It's, can he learn the NBA game? Can he adapt to that type of style of play? And so I think everyone's on the same page with that. Certainly, I think it was a disappointment that you weren't able to see more of that. But in my mind, it's more of the lessons of learning the actual NBA game, and then you factor in the injuries with that, and that really kind of just puts him behind the 8 ball. So I think going into next season, whether he's in Sacramento or elsewhere, that's not going to change. Like, he'll be so much more advanced and ahead of the game and look so much more ready for prime time, so to speak, and see if he can take advantage of any opportunity he gets.
Yeah, I didn't think he was a bad NBA player. Watching him play, I thought he was a player that, I don't know if you could have put him out there for 30 minutes and hid some of the deficiencies as a player, but overall, I thought he's smart. He's a better rebounder than we thought. He's a better defender than we thought. But he also was green in the NBA world. And I'll add this too. Like, he was in the locker room every single day, like almost every single, until he got hurt, and then he was gone for a little while. And when he came back from that, the toll that it took on him to be injured was like extreme. He was not used to being injured. He hasn't had a bunch of injuries throughout his career. And then he was alone. And that was really tough. And then when he did get back on the floor late in the season, I think he played 7 of the final 9 games. Look at the Kings schedule. They played every other day. Sometimes they played 3 games in 4 nights. Like, it was like their schedule to finish. There was no break. There was no time for practice. And there was no way to integrate him back in a meaningful way where he can find a rhythm and get better and be, ready to contribute. So I feel bad for him, because he left a place where he's a superstar. He comes to a place where he wants to show that he can be something. And then the opportunity was just difficult. And again, Mike Brown had to win. Everyone knows that. The Kings, like, the goal here was to win games, not to bring young players along. If you would have got Sasha Vezenkov 4 years ago, he probably could have played 30 minutes down the stretch or 28 minutes down the stretch to try to get him acclimated. But that's not who the Kings were. And so it makes life a lot more difficult for him. So I hope the best for him. I don't know if he'll be in Sacramento or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to on-court production, like, he's kind of an interesting case where I think he's a pretty much perfect fit offensively. I think he moves amazingly off the ball. I love watching him shoot the ball, the confidence that he has and the follow through. It's fun to watch, even just when it comes to him shooting, and he's damn good at it. So I think he's a really smart player. The ball never sticks with him. One of the Kings' big things is playing in a 0.5 offense, making decisions in 0.5 seconds. I think he's really good at that. It's just defensively, he can get targeted a little bit sometimes. And that's where they were trying to make a decent jump throughout the course of this season. So I think trying to strike that balance and figure out where he's going to fit when both of those are true is just a little bit of a weird spot to be in. And when it comes to the injuries, that was definitely a major part of this whole conversation. I remember talking to him at a shoot around right after one of them had happened. And he said, like, he's never really dealt with anything like this throughout the course of his career, whether that be in Europe or in this season. So I'm sure that while also attempting to adjust to an NBA schedule, there's just a lot going on there to figure out. I still think he can be a really productive NBA player. It's just about ideal timing and figuring out what's going to be able to optimize both him and the production that the team gets.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that a little bit, I remember talking to him about the injuries as well, and how he didn't expect to be out as long as he was, and thought he could play sooner than the doctors would clear him. And the reason that is because games come at you in the NBA so much quicker than they do in Europe. So, he might play a game once a week or however the schedule breaks down, but as James pointed out, 3 games in 4 nights, 6 and 7 at times. Like, I mean, these crazy scenarios, back to backs, and the travel. I mean, not that that's unheard of in Europe, but there's a lot more space and days off between games. You're not playing so many games in so little time, and so the recovery and the rehab and the rushing back from an injury, it might be easier to do that with days off in between, as opposed to, no, you got to come back and play 3 games in 4 nights now, and maybe you're on a minutes restriction. It's like, okay, well, no, if we just maybe hold you out another day or two, another week or so, and to get you more strength in that ankle and not have any setbacks, it's better for you. So I think overall, if you just there's frustration all around as he experienced this past year, and hopefully he sees a pathway that, whether it's in Sacramento or another team, he sees a pathway that finds him an opportunity to get ultimately what he's looking for.
Yeah, so just to throw this out there, the Kings played on March 29th. They played on the 31st. They played on the 2nd of April, the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, the 9th, the 11th, the 12th, the 14th, the 16th, and the 19th. Hidden within that is a trip to New York, Boston, back to New York, and then to OKC. So again, travel, swelling, like there's so many variables here.
No practices.
No practice.
Like, I think they had 2 practices that entire time.
At all. No practice time, nothing to get yourself acclimated. And I think that that's part of this. It's just really, really difficult to catch back up once you've like fallen behind. It's a little bit like when you're in school and you missed a week of school, and you can get through most of your classes, but you're so lost in math because it's all built on knowledge that you already should have. And I think that that's where, like, for him, some of the time that he lost, it's then compounded by the fact that there's no way to get back and put yourself back in a position to catch up. So, like, really difficult. Brenden, you got some?
Yeah. I guess just to add to that real quick, like, and Mike is always big on, at least from what I've heard, that, he wants guys to be able to go through a practice before they're eventually playing again. I think he re-injured one of his ankles, or it may have been the other ankle in a practice right after one of the injuries. But question to you guys, anytime I had seen Sasha in the locker room, he's on the phone speaking in what I'm assuming is Bulgarian. I don't know if either of y'all know. Is that tell you guys anything in a way? Does that stand out to you?
I talk to him a lot. Like, I would go over and say hi to him. We would chat. Like, I would make fun of him because he doesn't like American food. It has too much flavor. He wants his food like bland, and like we would just go back and forth. I would ask him about, like who he's hanging out with on the team, or just like how he's dealing with stuff. I know the second time he got injured, so he rolled one ankle, then he came back into a game, rolled the opposite ankle, and then at the next practice went back to the first ankle, I believe, and got the grade 3. So he basically had like a grade 2 in one ankle, and then a minor sprain in the other, and then rolled an ankle for a grade 3. So it was both ankles at one point that were hurting, and he tried to play through it. And the Kings, of course, have a different idea on this. Like, they've done this a million times, and they wanted him to be 100% healthy. So. Okay, so we've talked about Sasha a lot. We have no idea whether he'll be back or not. Good reporting from Sean there, getting as much information as we can possibly get. No, I mean, really, like, this is it's kind of weird because we're in a weird part of the season. I would not be surprised if his $6.6 million is packaged in a deal and he's sent elsewhere. I don't think that we're going to talk buyout with him like what we may have discussed last week. The only way for him really to walk away is for him to just say, hey, look, I don't want to, I'm going to take a full buyout. And I don't think the Kings are going to do that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even if they were to just waive him and do what's called a stretch provision, basically the only thing the Kings would do there is basically free up like $4 million in cap space this year, where the stretch provision is twice as many years as that are left on the contract plus 1. So because his last year's a team option, the Kings would void the team option. They could break his $6.6 million up into $2.2 million in each of the next 3 years. If that's just like, that's for waiving him and giving him like a true buyout. He could also renegotiate his contract down to walk away, or could ask to have his contract voided so he could walk away. And I believe, the Kings would have to at least listen, but it's not going to mean anything. It would mean that the Kings might be able to save a little bit of luxury tax money if they're able to do some of the things they want to do. But like, he's not going to give you enough money to like open up cap space. So if it really wouldn't help the team all that much in the grand scheme of things. I think he'll be in the league next year.
Yeah, I do.
And I hope the best for him. I think he's a good dude, and I just think that like everything kind of snowballed on him this season, and especially with injuries and loneliness and not getting to play nearly as much as he thought. So tough look.
To clarify that real quick, just because I've gotten questions about it and you pretty much covered it. That does nothing for Malik Monk. People have asked me before, like, does that, help clear up space? Nothing close. The two don't really equate to each other.
Yeah. So the Kings right now are at $152 million in dedicated salary. They're already $11 million over the salary cap. The luxury tax is $172 million, so another 20 up. If you sign Monk and then consider the 13th pick in the draft as a $5 million draft pick, you're already in the luxury tax. So if the Kings want to avoid the luxury tax and are able to retain Malik Monk, they're going to have to find a way to clear up other money. So that's one thing. So if you were to lose Sasha, it would drop you down. But the only way to give Monk more than the $17.4 million is if the Kings not only get all the way down to the salary cap at $141 million, but then free up like another, like, let's say you want a $25 million contract for Monk. You'd have to free up like another 28, maybe even 30 million, because you have minimum cap holds for minimum scale players that are $1 million a piece. So like if they were, so now basically you have the 11 million that they would need to get down to the luxury tag. I mean, down to the salary cap. And then you would need to clear up another 25 to 30 million to give Monk 25. So again, can the Kings clear $40 million in cap space without taking anything back? And the answer is no. There's not a team out there that's going to take on like a Harrison Barnes contract, and then another team to take on Kevin Huerter contract, another team to take on TRey Lyles contract, and another team to take on Chris Duarte contract, and take back nothing, because there are not enough teams in the league that have salary cap space to actually take those players. So really, really complicated, but it wouldn't help them one way or the other. So does that clear that up?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Okay, we have the TRey Lyles saying TRey Lyles has been invited to play for the Canadian national team, or at least try out for the Canadian national team. There are ties there. Of course, Jordi Fernandez is the head coach of the Canadian national team, and I believe Jay Triano is still there and still has a role with Canadian national team, which he's had many, many roles, including the head coach of the Canadian national team over the last couple of decades. Any thoughts on? I would love to see TRey get to play like super high level, because that Canadian team is going to be like spectacular. But like I don't know if he's going to make it. He's up against guys like Kelly Olynyk, Kem Birch. They have a couple other guys that would play around his position, but he does have experience with the coaching staff, which is kind of a good thing.
Yeah, honestly, it's hard to gauge if I think he would make it. I do think that, like you said, that Canadian team is very talented, and that's more so a credit to their team rather than anything about TRey. I think TRey definitely has his value on the basketball court. I also think he's a great locker room guy, almost kind of the enforcer that the Kings have in a way right now. And it's valuable to have those sort of guys. And, I guess Canadians are typically nice, so maybe you get one of those every once in a while. But I think it probably would be an uphill battle, but it's an extremely talented team. I think that Canadian team will probably give USA a run for their money, even though USA is going to have a dream team out there. And yeah, I think it would be an uphill battle, but I would love to see TRey compete on that.
Sean?
Well, I mean, I think you can certainly see how he could be impactful there, especially with the physicality of the international game. I think I don't recall his FIBA experience off the top of my head. I was trying to look it up real quick, but if he doesn't have the FIBA experience, I think that's going to set him back a little bit. But he would have been a part of their camp had he not been a free agent last year, is from what I had been told. And so I think that this is a good starting point for him. I can see a pathway for him to get in there, and certainly the familiarity with Jordy is going to help. I was trying to see if Jay still had a role as well with Canadian basketball, but also there's a guy I remember talking to Triano earlier in the year down in Stockton at the University of Pacific. They hired a coach by the name of Dave Smart to now oversee to now coach the Tigers men's program, and Dave Smart is like a Canadian basketball guru, for lack of a better term. And Jay had talked about how he would have hired Dave Smart to be his associate head coach, or at least be on his staff had he gotten the Phoenix job back in the day. So at any rate, it's just interesting. I think there's a lot of familiarity there. So I think he kind of gives him a leg up on the competition. He's also, as a guy who's been a former lottery pick and was a little bit of a journeyman before coming to Sacramento, I think he's really found his niche and his role point now, and probably in the best shape he's ever been in. So I think that'll bode well for him. So it'd be interesting to see if he can get there. That team, by the way, I mean, I don't know if you guys are keeping up with the international game, but they might be, the favorites to do it again. I mean, to win it all. I know they obviously won FIBA last year, so that's not really going out on a limb there, but the Olympics are a little bit different than FIBA. Your rosters look different during the Olympics than they do with FIBA. So they're still stout, and I almost think they might be the team to beat.
I think the dream team that Team USA is sending is going to be really impressive. I think they'll still be the team to beat, in my opinion. But I think Canadian national team is right there. It's a
little age too, yeah. I mean, if you look at there's some miles on that team. I mean, you're talking about Steph Curry being on his first Olympic team. That's
wild.
Crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, they're bringing the horses. Like, they're trying to win this thing one more time. Yeah, I think it's interesting. And just to make sure we're touching base on a couple of things here. Number one, I did talk to Mark Jones, who just ran into TRey Lyles and was the one who put it out there that TRey was going to the Team Canada training camp. Mark said that TRey looks like he's in the best shape of his life. He said he looks amazing. He's been back in Sacramento for like the last 3 weeks working out, and before that he was in LA for a while. So TRey Lyles is definitely like ready to roll. Number two, you brought up that he would have been on the team. Well, it would have been in camp last year if it wasn't for the fact that he is a free agent. And Mark actually brought up today on the air that that Jonas Valanciunas is in the same situation with Team Lithuania and will not play this summer because of his contract status as a free agent. And so those are things to kind of like put in the back of your head, that it's not just, a guy like TRey who decides, hey, I'm not going to go. It's also for a guy like Valanciunas who, it's just, you got to make your money while you can, and you don't want to risk getting hurt in like in Olympics and then cost yourself a whole bunch of opportunity with your NBA contract stuff. So interesting stuff there. What else do we have?
Well, real quick on that, what Sean was talking about earlier, it does look like, from what I can see, he was on the under 18 and 19 teams, but also played a couple qualifier games in 2021.
Oh, cool. So he's been around the team.
Yeah, and I noticed a minute ago when the roster, when Nick Nurse had coached the team for the senior men's team, he was on at least the roster. So
okay,
that's pretty recent.
Yeah, not too long ago. So yeah, good luck to TRey Lyles. And again, the Kings have, Sabonis will play for the Lithuanian national team this summer. I think that's, well, I don't know. Is Chris Duarte going to play for? Oh, I'm not sure that they're in the tournament for Dominican Republic. And then what other guys might we have that are? Oh, the Bulgarian national team is not in the Olympics. So although I think they do have a Euro Cup that Sasha will probably play in.
There's a qualifier too. So like Lithuania, they're in a group with with Ivory Coast and Mexico, and then if they win, they play. The Group B has Puerto Rico. I'm trying to remember the other two, but the tournament will take place in Puerto Rico, so that's coming up later. That comes up July 2nd, I believe, and
Okay.
then so Lithuania. I just spoke to Domas yesterday morning, and they still have to qualify, and he wasn't obviously part of FIBA last year. Jonas Valanciunas was, and they came up short. So he's trying to get back to the Olympics. He remembers the Tokyo, outside of Tokyo. I mean, he remembers those games, that being a part of it and being in the athlete village, and how much it meant for Lithuania to be represented there. So he's trying to get them back into the Olympics, but they've got a tough road first, and they've got to qualify.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know Sean talked to Domas. Domas is in Spain right now. We need Doug Christie's job, because Doug is with him in Spain,
And
hanging
Leandro,
out.
right?
Yeah, both of them are there.
I'm pretty
Well,
sure.
Barbosa was over there, but Barbosa has to come back for the Big Three, because he is the last year's second leading scorer in the Big Three, and they tip off tomorrow as we record this, Saturday in Oakland.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. So Sean, you brought it up. We have the news that broke today. Domantas Sabonis is going to switch numbers this year. He will go from number 10 to number 11. Number 11 is near and dear to his heart. It is the number that his dad wore as an NBA player. It's a number that he wore when he was a member of the Pacers. But in order to get that number, he had to go, or the Kings had to go to the family of Bob Davies, who his number 11 is retired for the Sacramento Kings. Bob Davies, of course, is a legend of the game from the 40s and 50s, and was on the last time the Sacramento Kings won an NBA title was like 1950, 1951. He was part of that team, and the family was gracious enough to allow Domas to take over the number 11, which so basically they're pulling the number out of retirement, which I thought was a very, very nice move by the family. And so what do you got for us, Sean? Because you talked to Domas about this, and sort of like what it was that he wanted to do here and why he wanted to do that.
Remember when he first got to town, I kind of joked with him, and I was like, you don't get to wear 11. It's in the rafters. Bob Davies, who, obviously never played in Sacramento, was in Rochester at the time, Rochester Royals, but he was aware of it. He kind of, smiled about it, and he talked about it at the time, like, wanting to, he wore 11 to honor his father, and coming over here. But I didn't realize that it was something that had kept going. Like, this dates back even for a while. There were efforts to, it always been in his mind, and thinking that it might be a possibility. It came up during his contract extension, and this past year when the team was in Orlando, he actually met with the family. Bob Davies passed away back in like 1990, but his daughter Cammie is one of the people who has been the most active, and she's obviously had a quote out there. But they met with Domas. They were not only gave the blessing, I mean, they're thrilled. I mean, it's going to shine a light on Bob Davies and the franchise being able to honor him in such a way. And they were really kind of touched by it. And I asked him, I was like, was there some hardcore negotiations? Did you have to, bend arms? Did you have to send a bunch of money? The family was just kind of thrilled that he would want to do that. And so it's fun. It certainly means a lot to him. I mean, people who may not know, aside from just Arvydas Sabonis wearing it and being a Hall of Famer, his daughter was born last July, on July 11th, and they named their daughter 11. And so it's just, it means a lot. The siblings I know talk about them. 11, he said every time he saw a player, if he watched basketball, he'd look at the guy in the 11 jersey and be like, I bet he's the best player on the team. And it's just, that's how much, 11, he'd gravitate that way towards it. And he always wore it with the national team with Lithuania. And yeah, he's got it. And it kind of leads a little bit of speculation too. Like, now that 10 is unoccupied again, I don't know if they're going to give it away. There's some people thinking that maybe, just maybe, might see Mike Bibby's name possibility of sending that number to the rafters at some point. So something to kind of keep track of for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't like, I'm kind of to the point where, like, we were discussing this on the radio today. Like, I like a ring of honor more than I like a jersey retirement at this point. Like, first of all, like the NFL, they're running out of numbers. Like the 49ers are running out of numbers to retire. And that's a problem, because what do you do? Like, you can't just totally disrespect somebody, but sometimes you have to, and you have to give away a number after a guy leaves. And I get it. Like in the NBA, there's not as many players, but when you have a team that's been around for like 100 years, which the Kings had their 100-year celebration last season, like there's going to be times where you want to like retire somebody's number. And I think a ring of honor to me would be better for like moving forward. Like you can put a guy like Mike Bibby, which I don't know that I would retire Mike Bibby's number, like not to be disrespectful, but like that team as a whole, you already retired Peja, you already retired Weber, you already retired Vlade. Are
And
you
Mitch
going to
Richmond.
retire? Well, and Mitch Richmond, but from the team that the glory years, right? Like if you're going to retire Mike, do you retire Doug? Do you retire Bobby? Like I almost would prefer like a ring of honor. And that way you can put a guy like DeMarcus Cousins in a ring of honor, but not retire his number. I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy here.
I'm with you. And like this almost feels unnecessary, but they didn't win. You know, like
No,
I know they
I
got
get what you're
far.
saying.
I know they got far, and they have a great legacy within the city that still very much exists, and mean very much. It just, I don't know. At what point is it too many?
Well, and
Yeah.
I'd say this. I mean, you look at teams across the landscape of the NBA, and yeah, they're not the Celtics, they're not the Lakers, and there's a ton of jerseys hanging from those rafters. But in the Sacramento era, you're only talking about a handful of players. So I think that's the tough part about being the Kings organization. You have 100 years. You've been in Rochester, Cincinnati, Sacramento, Kansas City. So
Omaha.
you Omaha, yeah, you have ways to honor the history of your team. Ring of Honor, sure. I mean, I guess I don't think the Kings are approaching unnecessary amount of numbers to be retired yet. But I will say, like, they already have some of them up there that are a little head scratching, even in the Sacramento era. Like, I mean, to me, there's really only two that you really need to retire if you have to. And I'm just being, to James's point, I'm being a little bit overly critical, but to me, there's two faces. There's Mitch Richmond and there's Chris Webber, and beyond that, everything else is kind of maybe a ring of honor. I kind of like not to bring it to baseball, but the San Francisco Giants don't retire a lot of numbers. And I think, there are a few numbers out there. You can see it. I think Will Clark and Barry Bonds were the most recent of the ones that were retired, but they have a Giants Hall of Fame, and there's a wall outside the stadium, and everybody is, for your players that were stars, but maybe weren't superstars or legends of the game, they go on that wall. Maybe, yeah, I agree. Maybe you can build a statue or have a mural in the building. There's other ways to honor players, but there's also no rule of not being able to, you can just unretire a number. It's not the most tactful thing to do, but maybe you're going to say, Hey, we're going to, retire another number. Maybe you've got two of them. I don't know. I mean, Kobe's got two numbers in Lakerlands that's retired. I think there's no rules to it. There's obviously some tact that goes into it, but you want to do it in a classy way.
This is the first time I've heard somebody pitching temporarily retiring a number.
Yeah. You look up there and you go, you know what? We're not feeling this anymore, Sam Lacey. Let's pull that down. And no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I would add this too. I think like Vlade is in the Hall of Fame, and he's in the Hall of Fame like not as just an NBA player. I mean, that helped his case, but he's in because of his time Team Yugoslavia and the Serbian national team, and sort of the greatness, the bringing the European game over. So I'm actually okay with Vlade. And I think, again, Vlade in Sacramento is considered different. It's thought of differently now than he was like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, before he took on the job as a GM. And then I would say the same thing with Peja. Like when Peja retired, he was third in the NBA history in 3-point makes, and now he's like 25th because the game's changed. But Peja will likely be in the Hall of Fame. And so I kind of think that you should wait until they're in the Hall of Fame before you do that. But at the same time, I kind of get it. These players meant a lot. But then my question would be like, how do you, if you're going to have Peja who's not in the Hall of Fame, how do you not have Bibby? How do you not have Doug? How do you not have Bobby Jackson? And then at what end, like, do you start getting to the Scott Pollards of the world? Do you not? Like, how do you manage that, and how do you not hurt feelings and all that stuff? And so I just think it's really weird, and I think you could do like a Ring of Honor for a specific team, and like, I don't know, there's a lot of space up there. So anyway,
not to
it's a building. Yeah, go ahead.
Not to be disrespectful, are we Peja's a Hall of Famer?
He's going to be in the Hall of Fame from his combined between his,
Gotcha.
at least I believe, between his European play and his play in the NBA. Again, Mike Bibby never made an all-star team.
No.
So, I mean, so that's one of those things where you're like, he's not going to be in the Hall of Fame. And like, I'm not sure how you like would keep him out of the Ring of Honor in Sacramento, and the same with Bobby and the same with Doug. Like, how would you not? So yeah, just kind of an interesting discussion. I do think it's a total mistake to not have Rick Adelman's banner in the like the ceiling.
Well, they should retire the microphone of Gary Gerald, and I've always said have him represented up there. I mean, that's a thing that they need, that in my opinion you do while you celebrate the man while he's here and still doing the job, especially in his case. And I'll just to close the book on that, I'm not saying that Mike Bibby's getting his number retired. I was just kind of having some fun there since he wore number 10. Also, if there's one person that needs their for the Hall of Fame, for example, you mentioned Peja. There's one that's not in the Hall of Fame, and it bothers the ever-loving shit out of me, and it's Tisha Penicheiro. And she should be absolutely in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I think that'll happen. It'll probably happen very soon, but boy, that just drives me nuts. She's like the John Stockton of that sport, and she's not in the Hall of Fame. It's crazy.
Well, that, and she doesn't have the John Stockton post NBA career legacy, which is a nightmare. Actually, both those guys.
And she's representing athletes. She's, in an agency. I mean, she's gone on to have a great post basketball career still attached to the game. And so I would.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would love to see that. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because you go through ownership changes, you go through management or like president of the Kings organization changes. You go through changes all the time, and it's difficult to like who's going to be up there and who's not, and how do you represent something. But again, Rick Adelman is in the Hall of Fame. The Kings have 10 winning seasons in 39 years, and 8 of those are Rick Adelman's. Like, the dude's greatness as a head coach is unmatched, and he's still around. He could still accept what the honor. And they did name Gary the radio booth after Gary Gerald, but I've also I think he should be in the rafters. His name should be in the rafters, and also I've always thought that they should name the media room after Gary Gerald.
Yeah.
It's just my own opinion. What else do we have to cover? There's something else. Oh, the NBA Finals is going on, but it's not competitive at all. I guess that let's do the business of basketball. Something happened. Damn it, Brenden.
Sean, do something.
No, you do enough.
Figure it out, dude. You've had plenty of episodes to figure it out.
Finally got it right.
I don't know. I'm just making shit up over here. Figure it out.
I liked what you did. I didn't like the sports
you can do the same thing if you want. I can leave it for you.
No, I like you've got it taken care of. I don't know if I need to do anything afterwards. Go ahead.
Okay, so the NBA Finals are going to end, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's Tuesday or it's sometime next week. The Boston
Monday.
Celtics look inevitable. Yeah, it's Monday, right? Is game 5. Tonight is game 4. Um, the Boston Celtics look inevitable. Like, they're so much better than anyone else. And then, of course, just so people know, the day after the finals end, whatever that day it is, if the finals end today and tomorrow, the Sacramento Kings can officially start negotiating with Malik Monk for his contract extension.
Officially.
Well, a new contract, because he is their own free agent. None of us know what's going to happen here, whether Malik's going to get to some crazy deal somewhere that he can't turn down, or what's going to happen. The Kings can offer him a 4-year, $78.4 million contract. They can do an opt out at some point. Like we understand and what it is that they can pay him, but also there's only so much they can pay him, and they're sort of locked into this early bird thing, and that's all they can do, right? I bring this up, but to jump back to the NBA Finals, I think they've played out the way that a lot of people. I mean, I had the Celtics in 5. I think you guys both had Celtics in 5 or 6, right?
I think we all did. I think we all had Celtics in 5.
Yeah, I think so too. We might be wrong. I don't know if it's going to go 5. But there's this situation that happened after game 3 where Brian Windhorst decided to unload on Luka Doncic in postgame. And that's why we're bringing this up as the business of basketball, because it's not totally Sacramento Kings related, but it still fits sort of what we're talking about here. I didn't think Brian Windhorst said anything incorrect. I don't think there's anything you can single out and say, oh, like, what is he doing? I thought that the stage in which he was doing it on, and where he was on the court, and all of that stuff, like, was slightly jarring. But at the same time, this is the hot take world we live in. And I thought calling a player out like Luka Doncic in this situation was I don't know. It's different. It's different. I don't want to say good. I don't want to say bad. Were you guys as caught off guard by Windhorst in this situation as I was?
I watched it happen in real time, and my eyes kept getting wider and wider, and I rewound it immediately to watch it again to make sure that I heard it right. You're right. I mean, he didn't say anything wrong. It was just a very dramatic take, and I think the way that he did it, and it's also a little. I mean, if you listen to the Hoop Collective podcast that Windhorst does, he's got some strong takes on there. So they're not, this isn't like a unheard of thing. But I think you're right, James, in the nature he was doing it right after, the NBA Finals wrap. He's on the court. He's on SportsCenter right after that with Van Pelt. It seemed like that a little, like it almost like someone might have thought it crossed the line. I didn't think that it crossed the line at all. And in fact, I don't think Luka Doncic would have too. I'd be curious to see how he'd respond to it, because I don't think he honestly would be the type of guy that would be bent out of shape over what Windhorst said. But I thought the analysis was spot on. I just thought the way he did it was a little insane, but I'm here for it. I thought it was great. I mean, it's accountability, and I think it's things that people have been talking about forever, and to see that play out, especially the way that foul did and the way he reacted to the bench. And I think Windhorst drew a nice comparison to what happened in years prior in international competition and things like that. It's a little bit of a track record. So it does shine a light on him in a way for a brilliant basketball player. You kind of understand why some people have talked about, like, we can bring it back to a Kings standpoint a little bit. Like, if Luka Doncic had come to Sacramento, one, would he still be with Sacramento in 2024? Would you still know Luka Doncic the way you know him now? And furthermore, who would have had to have left? Like, I know there's people all the time that say, oh, he and Fox could play together. Sure, they could. Fox is not a dominating personality per se, but look at how many personalities they brought in and talents they brought in around Luka when he first got. I mean, they immediately trade Dennis Smith. Jalen Brunson is gone just recently. Kristaps Porzingis, things like this, all these different elements that have been around him that they've tried to win with. He's not an easy person to play with. And so this is a lot of the same stuff that DeMarcus Cousins would be slapped for during his prime, so it reminds me of that. But the difference is Luka Doncic is actually in the postseason and getting deep into the playoffs during his prime. So I think because he wins, it puts him in a different light than the light of like somebody like DeMarcus with Sacramento at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think Luka is one of the best players in the league. I think at some point he's probably going to deserve an MVP. And I think that what he's going through right now is actually a pretty valuable learning experience. It feels similar to, I feel like, seeing Tatum kind of go through the same thing. There was years prior where he's in the finals and he's complaining a lot. And now he's kind of not doing it to the same extent, at least. And I think this is just a learning process. Edwards, Luka, these guys, like the experience they got in these playoffs, I think will be valuable long term. When it comes to the Windhorst stuff, you guys made me aware of this right before we got on air. And yeah, I mean, it's just like, damn. Okay. It feels so personal. Like, I mean, I guess personal is not the right way to say it, because I do agree with you guys. I think it's accurate. I do think it's warranted to an extent. It just felt a little extra, I guess. But I do think Windy is kind of that guy. And when it comes down to it, this is kind of entertainment that we're doing. And he definitely was entertaining, to say the least. But I do think he was accurate. It was just like, just a little bit of a lot, and I'll say something that I've kind of struggled with balancing, and I'm still fairly new to this going into year 4, is how to talk about players when they mess up, because they're all still human, and the best way to go about that. And so I guess I'll say, I don't think I would have had the easiest time going about it that route, but I think he was fair for what he said.
Yeah, I think you just said it right there. The word is fair. Like, don't be personal. Don't attack. You can attack a player's action, but don't attack the personality or the reason behind it. I don't know. It's really difficult because we've had some characters here in Sacramento, but I also want to draw this back because, Sean brought up, the Kings they get roasted all the time as a team that passed on Luka. For some reason, again, the Phoenix Suns don't get roasted for this, and the Atlanta Hawks, who traded the pick, don't get roasted. The Kings do for, a litany of reasons because they're the Kings. But like talking to Vlade after that, and not just like the instant reaction and 2 days later, but like over the course of like a couple of years, it was issues like this that were always in the back of his head. I'll tell you some of the issues that he had. Number one, like, you had no idea what position he played on the court, which isn't a problem on the offensive end. But the Kings were very concerned about whether Luka could ever guard anybody because he doesn't have a natural position, because he's not in very good shape. They were also concerned about that. They were concerned about the other side of Luka, the off the court side of Luka, that you don't know what you're going to get from him, whether it's, again, his nightlife, or, he was an 18, 19-year-old kid driving around Europe doing whatever he wanted. And they knew a lot of sort of who and what he was off the court. And that was a concern. And then there's the teammate aspect, and they loved Fox. They knew that Fox would never become Fox with Luka. And I think, I don't want to say that they're off the hook because they passed on a generational talent who Sean said is in his prime. He's not in his prime yet. He's 3 years away from it.
Yeah.
He's 25.
No, it's funny, right? When I said that, I said, no, not really. But he plays. I mean, you just look at what he's doing. I mean, it's incredible.
So good.
But look at all of the things that the concerns were. They're all still there. He will not play defense at all. It's shameful what he's doing on the defensive end. Like,
James, can I say one thing? Like, Wendy's comments, this is maybe what struck me most. It's you're not wrong, but like, what did you expect? Did you expect him to change who he is in the NBA Finals? He just got his team to the NBA Finals. He's playing basically on one leg. Yes, he's a man of larger carriage, as am I. Like he is a guy who is never in the best basketball shape. He's
Ever.
playing practically on one leg. I mean, he was playing on one leg when he was trying to when he was playing the Kings those two games here in Sacramento before the season came to an end. I was a little surprised he stayed in one of the games. But he's not going to that zebra ain't changing his stripes. Can he become a better defender? Sure. He'd have to really dedicate himself and do the one thing he can control is what he does to the officials, what he does to his teammates, what he does. He's dominating in the game. He's dominating personality, but he's a ball dominant guard as well. So like I go on to say all these things are like, what'd you expect? Have you never seen Luka Doncic in your life? And I'm saying that sarcastically because clearly not only Windhorst has, but he knows him so well and has done his homework so much on that. The only thing is to see him roast him at that moment in the playoffs or in the finals, he's not wrong, but it's like, man, this is who the guy is. I don't know if you were expecting to see something different in the NBA finals.
Okay. So here's the problem I have is that in the previous round, when things were going good, that's not who Luka was. He had stopped yelling at the officials. He was smiling. He was having a good time. He was winning. As soon as things have gotten tough, he's regressed to who he's always been, which you can kind of expect, right? And if you look at watch some of the defensive tape, like the blow-bys are the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen, where he just olays everybody. But it's not just that. It's no rotation. It's standing 8 feet off a shooter when you know he's knocked down a couple of threes. It's not even trying to defend someone on a back cut. Like his refusal to play defense is the reason his team is just getting its ass kicked. And I mean, it's tough, but I would just point to a couple of things. Number one, they didn't make the playoffs last year at all. Like they weren't a good team at all with him there. And a lot of that was on him. And then you get to this year and he becomes a darling again in the media, and everyone is just so excited and everyone wants to hand him an MVP trophy. And I get it. I mean, his stats are ridiculous. He averages almost 34, almost 10 assists and like over 9 rebounds a game. He is literally insanely good, but he's still out of shape. He still doesn't play defense. He still doesn't have a natural position to defend. He still does whatever he wants off the court. And it kind of again, I don't want to let Vlade off the hook for passing on a generational talent, but I also can understand why you're always going to have some sort of little thing in the back of your mind of do I want to put everything in my franchise on him? And I don't know. I don't know if that's something that, I mean, it clearly was something Vlade was not willing to do. And it proves to be a mistake, but how big of a mistake? It's not that Luka has a bunch of MVPs. It's not that he has a bunch of titles. He's a great player, but was still some of the same warts that he had as a 19-year-old player. Brenden?
I definitely get what you're saying. I will say, I think that, I think Luka could end up being the best player in the league for a couple years over. And it was, you'd rather have him on your team, even if he has some shit to him.
Yeah, I know, but
that's my
I
perspective.
think I'd also say you're talking to a team that had just gone through an entire era where they had another player that was extremely difficult. Character matters, and another guy in the DeMarcus Cousins that was tough, and so it's hard to not have not understand the PTSD of it, right? Because I think it does at the end of the day. So interesting discussion. All right. I think we're good. I think we're going to wrap this thing up. Do you guys have any final thoughts? Brenden, what do you got?
Yeah, I will go. I am thinking often as the Celtics are whooping the Mavericks' ass in this finals about how I think in hindsight, we're going to look back at this team and be like, they really dominated this season. They've lost 2 games in the postseason. And they won, 67? 64. Yeah, throughout the course of the regular season. They lost less than 20 games. And they had a net differential of 11.7. This team was dominant. And I think that it was understandable to question them throughout the course of the year because they've gotten to this point a couple times, Eastern Conference Finals, 6 of the last 8, which everybody talks about that as if it's a bad thing, which is a little weird to me. But I get why it's like we need to see it, but we are now. And I think in hindsight, this team is going to really get looked back on as they were kind of whooping everybody's ass all year long.
They were far and away the best team that we've seen all year. And we were talking about it, you know. You can learn something listening to this podcast, damn it. We were talking about it. I know I was, and I'm not trying to say I'm this genius. I admit when I'm wrong. This I didn't think anybody could be in the class of the Celtics this year at all. And they were my pick for the championship. They were that good. And they were that good coming into the season. By January, you knew they were that team.
I would agree with you.
And Brenden, like, I know you Celtics fan and all that stuff. You're not wrong. And honestly, I could see them doing this for the next 3 years.
I absolutely agree. I think they're going to be a problem for a little while.
Yeah. I agree. I want to see how their legacy changes because we're seeing like year 1. And I love that Tatum and Brown are like coming of age together. Like they've had their failures. They've had their failures deep in the playoffs. I also would point out that like the team that they had last year, which was really good, and the team they had the year before that was really good. Like last year's roster in their rotation, Grant Williams, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon were in their rotation. And Brad Stevens knew he didn't have enough to win a championship, and he went out and he made bold and strong moves to improve his roster. And it's not easy to do. Just like I will say this about Jeff Petrie. It was not easy to trade Jason Williams for Mike Bibby. That was a hard decision. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for the program. And that's where I'm hoping that the Kings are looking at what they've built and the flaws that they have and how difficult decisions have to be made. But that's the job. And it's part of, you know, if you want to take another step, you have to be bold and you've got to put risks out there. You've got to extend yourself where you're not comfortable, because that's what the great teams, that's how they're built. That's how they become great, and it's how they sustain greatness. They don't sit back and just wait for something to happen. They have to go out and make it happen themselves. So.
Yeah. Specifically with Marcus Smart, to me, like as a, you know, I kind of grew up a Celtics guy, and to me, Marcus was like embodiment of the Celtics, you know, and moving on from him seemed, at least from my perspective, like that tough decision that you're kind of talking about, and but he really seemed like the guy. And it is a little, you know, I kind of wish he would get an honorary ring, but fair enough. And it was the right decision, but definitely with you. That's the one that really sticks out to me though.
Yeah. Tough decisions have to be made. Sean, final thoughts?
Oh, I don't know. I'm a little upset that I'm gonna miss the Jug Life Celebrity game, softball game at Sutter Health Park. The JaVale McGee basketball. I mean, he's been making the rounds, man.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Is good for him. He's on everybody's stuff. We had him at Fox 40. He's been just everywhere. The guy is promoting the hell out of this thing. So found out Mike Brown's going to play. That's going to be fun. That makes me want to go, but I can't. I've got some family stuff. So if you guys get out there, let me know. I want to see this. Yeah, Mike's going to play.
Okay.
I want to see like a full swing bunt or something and see if he turns the Jets, trying to turn first, head into second, big old head first slide or something.
You know,
incredible.
I think that people, like, if you're not around Mike Brown, you forget that Mike Brown is a big dude. Like, Mike Brown is, what is he, 6'3"? Like, he's a good sized dude. And not only that, but he played college basketball. I'm going to guess that Mike Brown can play a little softball. I'm going to guess he can hit a ball a long way.
He's going to be a softball guy?
I'm just going to put it out there that, like, I think Mike Brown could probably hit a home run.
I'd want Mike Brown on my beer league softball team. That would be incredible.
Well,
I want Mike Brown on any team that I'm a part of.
Oh, yeah. Brad would play. Yeah, Brad would play. He'd be down.
Yeah. Interesting.
But the other thing is, like, I mean, I gave a shout out to the Big Three. I got to talk to Ice Cube this week. That was every time Big Three comes around, it's just funny to see how many former Kings there are. And then just former players where you look around and go, oh my gosh, like he's still in the league. But yeah, like Barbosa, to be able to still be an assistant coach in the NBA and then, moonlight as a 3-on-3 basketball player for 10 weeks during the summer. That's awesome. Nancy Lieberman is a head coach in that league, Lisa Leslie. So they have two, female coaches that are legends in their game. And Nancy Lieberman's won a championship within the Big Three. So 7th year now for the Big Three, and it's kind of getting bigger and bigger. Good on them. It's going to open in Oakland. I hope to see it up in Sacramento one time. And again, when nothing is happening, during these next 10 weeks of the year, it's actually really entertaining. I find myself tuning into it. So if you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. And then I went to Jordan Ford's basketball camp, caught up with him. You guys might appreciate this. I don't know how many camps you guys have seen, but like you go there, sometimes you see an athlete involved with the kids, and that's always good. I like to shout out the guys that are always there doing their thing. They usually have a coach that's kind of running things and running the drills and going from station to station. And certainly Jordan Ford has help, but the dude has the whistle on and he is literally running his own camp.
That's
and
awesome.
it is hilarious. He had 3 days with kids, boys and girls from like kindergarten to seniors in high school. It was wild. And then lastly, if you hadn't checked out the Domantas Sabonis interview, I not trying to pat myself on the back at all, but like I think there's a lot of stuff outside the number change that was kind of interesting. Him talking about his father. He weighs in on Malik Monk, saying he's still being annoying to Malik, and if Malik doesn't come back to the Kings, he's never going to forgive him. He's not going to talk to him. Stuff like that. I mean, he weighs in on Mike Brown. He weighs in on him being at Bottle Rock. It was just a fun conversation with Domas. You might see him in a little bit of a different light. I mean, the guy was incredibly jovial and fun to talk to, and that must be what Spain does to you, because I think if I was hanging out in Spain for a few weeks, I'd probably feel the same way.
Just to piggyback off that real quick. Listen to that this morning. I think, Sean, you came on the station this morning and we're talking about it. And I feel like Domas was very open in that interview. I would definitely say people should go listen to that. He was hearing him talk about his father. I didn't know that his daughter was named 11. And I certainly didn't know the born at whatever 11.
July 11th. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I thought that was a great interview, actually.
Thanks, man.
Might have got me a little emotional at a point, but
you
did all right.
Well,
you did all right.
It wasn't it had nothing to do with me. It's all
no, it's definitely asking him if he's a better player than his father. Or well, right before that, he kind of asked about, is there pressure to it? And he's like, no, he was always just dad to me. He wasn't Arvydas Sabonis. Might have got me a little bit here for Father's Day, and then after the fact, asking him, do you think you're better than your dad? And him saying, hell no, not even close. It was great.
That was fun.
I think it's interesting. I'm excited to listen to it because, like, we deal with Domas all the time, and he's like, you're always waiting for him to have like a moment where he lets down his guard, and he just doesn't want to in most settings. And I've talked about this. I think he's better at the podium than he is in a scrum. I've always thought that when he's in a scrum, it's always super quick. I don't think he likes people being around him like they are in a scrum setting. And so I like to see him like kind of let go a little bit because a lot of times it's 8-word answers and like bum 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 bum, next question, bum 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 bum, next question. And I feel like sometimes it's like we're rapid firing him, and it's pretty crazy. So let's see. I see my final thoughts. Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. It's cool being a dad, but still got my pops around, so it's good to hang out, and however you celebrate, have a good time this weekend. So shout out to all the dads out there. We definitely have a lot more Kings dads than we have in the past. It feels like the team is growing up around us, which is interesting. But outside of that, I don't know. Enjoy the weather. I got it 85 degrees right now. 85 degrees. What in the world? Like, just beautiful. After it was 103 earlier this week. So kind of enjoy outside, be good, have a good, celebratory weekend. Again, we're going to try to put together off the record with the KINGSBEAT virtual happy hour for next Thursday. Chances are we won't do a guest just because we haven't done a happy hour in a long time. We need to catch up with everybody, kind of check in. So if you're a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat, you will get the invitation to that. Those are always fun. They're fully off the record, and we kind of let loose and have a good time there. I'm sure there are plenty of things that people want to talk about that have happened, transpired over the last couple of months that we haven't been able to do a happy hour. Do we got anything else, guys?
No, I
I
mean,
don't know.
you kind of mentioned the father thing when it comes to Kings people and personnel, and I did think recently with Jordy leaving, Dolkey's leaving, I kind of feel for Luke Laux. It seems like
Oh,
those three were really close, and even family wise, and yeah, I guess I don't really have a point to that, but it does seem like they are really close. I know.
Go give him a hug. Go
Dolkey's,
give him a hug.
hey, Dolkey's and
Just I
Luke
feel for
were
'em.
college teammates. Their wives were friends in college. They've been friends forever. They have a bunch of kids that are all around the same age. That's gonna be a tough one, and I hope we don't lose the little kid vibe that we've had the last couple of years, because you're right. We just, like, 5 little kids just got shipped to Brooklyn. Like, they're not going to be around. And I think that that's one of the defining things of the early Mike Brown era, is that there's so many little ones, like under 4. There's probably like 12 of them running around in every pregame, and it's really cool. Like, the family vibe of this team has been cool. So I hope we don't lose that this
Well,
year.
including Mike's grandchildren. Like that's always cool to see too.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely Mike's grandchildren. And lastly, I think I hate doing this every time Sean gets pissed. I do this, but the NBA lost an absolute legend this week in Jerry West. So thoughts and prayers out to the West family. I know Johnny West has been around the NBA for a long time as a front office person. I've always a good dude, nice, very nice guy. I had the privilege of meeting Jerry West just once with Doug one time when we were in LA, and he was super thoughtful, super nice. And then I kind of let them have their time, because that's who Jerry West traded for Doug when Doug was drafted by the Seattle Supersonics in 1992, and then had a bunch of problems with the Sonics and didn't want to play there and wouldn't play there. And so Jerry West actually traded for him and brought him to LA before he went on to play for the Knicks and the Raptors and then the Kings. But yeah, thoughts and prayers out to Jerry West family. 86 years old, and one of the true, probably the greatest overall contributor to the NBA outside of David Stern over the last 60 years, from a player to a coach to an executive. 8 championship rings as an executive. It's just absolutely incredible. Incredible.
Aside from the obvious that's already been said about him as a competitor and a Hall of Famer and all that stuff, I thought Michael Jordan's tribute was incredible. What he said about him, talking about how he'd love to have competed against him, but also would have been amazing to be a teammate with him. But to me, the thing I'll remember most about Jerry West that hasn't, in my opinion, been said was my first time talking to him and not realizing that I wasn't ready for that conversation. And what I mean by that is, like, you walk up to a guy and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Maybe ask him a question. I'm a media member. I'm super young at the time, and I wasn't ready for him to try to bring me into this 20-minute conversation. And where he did a lot of the speaking, and it was different in the we'd always tease Bill Walton. Our rest in peace to him as well. We just lost him as well, but Bill Walton, you'd ask him one question and he'd go on for half an hour. I mean, you might get 2 questions in a half an hour. Jerry's was more of a discussion, but at the same time, like, he was so fascinating that just listening to him, everything he could talk about, like the way he evaluated people, the way he evaluated talent, the way he would, the way he knew the landscape of not only sports or not only basketball, but sports in general, like the stuff he could steal from soccer, baseball, football, and be aware of all these different things and bring it into the light of the NBA world was fascinating to me. So yeah, what a legend, what a gentleman, a perfect gentleman, and what a, I hope that logo never changes. I'm serious when I say that. I know people think that logo should look a little bit different, and I hope it never does.
I would agree with you.
Damn.
All right.
He almost reminds me of Alvin Gentry. Like they feel similar to me, in that way you're talking about when having conversations, and it's always smooth and easy, and they rant in the best way possible. And I would just say, I think that when he went on the podcast with Paul George, that was an amazing episode. And Jerry, sure enough, rants and tells great stories.
Yeah, and that was at 85 years old on that podcast. Absolutely crazy. So amazing, amazing figure in the basketball world. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the KINGSBEAT podcast. We are, of course, a Blue Wire podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week. We will have a happy hour, likely next Thursday. Those things usually go from 5:30 until around 7. It's a good time. We drink. We have a good time. Open book, off the record. So jump on board with the King's Beat. But outside of that, thanks for tuning in. Give us thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, do all that good stuff. So for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320, the King's Beat. See you soon.